Hey guys, it's Ken. So thank you guys for watching. This video was specifically made from our own subscribers that have sent in really good emails. And over the years, I've talked about lots of different videos and lots of ways that we've made money. And somebody wanted to know, could you just give me 3 ways where you guys have made money and how you look at things? And so that was fun. I was able to put this short list together. These 3 ways. We'll start with probably the most obvious is what we call a value add. And I'm going to show you guys what a value add is. For those of you who don't know what a value add, that's okay. Basically, it's as simple as this. If there's a vacant building on the corner and it's a busy corner, it's worth something. But it's definitely not worth what it would be if somebody was inside of it paying rent. It's that simple. So literally a vacant building is worth less than one that's full. And so now you can take that to an nth degree too. And so let me show you a couple things that we've done and how a typical value add might work. This is a model that I've done over and over and over, and this is actually probably one of the best ways that has gotten me very wealthy and made a lot of money for our investors. So the example that I want to give you is if we have a 100-unit building, and we have 3 different unit types, for example, and obviously this is a multi-family building, but it doesn't have to be. It could be a commercial building. But we have the 1 bedrooms, the 2 bedrooms, and the 3 bedrooms, let's say. And you'll find that the types of units are all over the map. We've had properties that have been all 1 bedrooms. We've had properties that have been all 2 bedrooms. We have properties that don't have any 3 bedrooms, some that have 2s and 3s, some that have 1s and 2s, so it doesn't really matter, but you get the point here. And so the point is that when you're buying the property and you're looking at the rents on these particular buildings, let's say the rents are, let's say, $700 for a 1-bedroom, $900 for a 2-bedroom, and $1,100 for a 3-bedroom. And these are very close to some of the numbers that we bought on many properties. And so now this property might be 20 years or 30 years old. It might have a lot of old carpet in it. It might have old paint, the door and the hallways and the exterior, all those things that make anything look dated. That is basically what that is. And so what happens, just like it would on a single-family house, when you start to look at renovating, then you can actually charge more rent. And so what we did on this particular property, and usually our properties are 200 or 300, even 400, and I just gave you a 680-unit example of doing this. But usually what we might spend on a property like this could be anywhere from $3,000 to $8,000 on the insides of all of these units, okay? So let's just say it's $5,000. And so it's 100 units, so that's $500,000 remodel, okay? And so what you would do is you see this property that has very dated units. It's in a great area, hopefully, and you looked at the last video that walked you through some of that market data, and you guys are super focused. And now you find this little jewel where these residents are paying, rents. Some of these people may have been here for 10, 15 years, and they're paying these low rents. And you guys know what I'm talking about, okay? So what we would do is we would buy the property, and then we would capitalize it with another $500,000, let's say $5,000 times 100, and then we would start renovating these units. And these renovations might take a year, it might take 18 months, whatever it does, you can figure that out. And a lot of these are based on lease expirations. And when people move out, instead of re-renting it right away, we would renovate it and then re-rent it for a higher rent. And you're constantly testing the market to see where those rents could be. But this is where the magic happens, is that you take the 1 bedrooms and you're now at, say, 850. The 2 bedrooms are, let's say, 1,050, and the 1 bedrooms are, say, 1,250. So this is what we would call $150 a unit value add. So when you add these things together, what you're going to find is that this is $150 a unit value add upgrade. So this is now how you're selling the investment to an investor. So if I was to take $150 times 100, that's $15,000 that we have here. So $15,000 a month times 12 is $180,000. Okay? Now, so you've spent $500,000 to get $180,000 more in income, okay? So for all you guys that like to figure out your payback or cost of return, this is about a 2.5-year return, roughly, right? So you spent $500,000 to get $180,000. But here is actually the best part, is that you take this at a cap rate, let's say of 5%, and we have $180,000 at 5%. So you've now increased the value of the property by $3.6 million. And this is actually what you're trying to do here. So you took $500,000, you're getting it back in cash flow. So you're actually, believe it or not, you're paying a return on that. You know what I mean? That extra 500 grand plus whatever you had to get to buy it. But the real magic in the value add is that you've increased the value of the property by $3.6 million by just doing this simple value add on 100 units. Now imagine, it's 200 units, it's 7.2, and so on. 300 units is times 3. So what happens is that you start to raise this money from people and you start to see this value add, then it all makes sense here. So people understand math, and this is back to the data. So we knew, now here's the mistakes you can make. You can overstate the 150, or hopefully you don't. In a lot of cases, we've gotten significantly higher. You can also make a big mistake right here. This $5,000 a unit can cost you $6,000 or $7,000 a unit. Now think about this. If something costs you $6,000 a unit and you tell the investors it's $5,000, it's 1,000 times 100. That's a $100,000 mistake. That's a big mistake. So all these have to manage, but eventually when you go back to do a refinance, you're going to get this this renovation money back. And you're going to be able to pay back most of the capital, if not all of the capital. Plus, you're going to have much, much better cash flow. So that is a great example of a value add. The next one that we're going to talk about is buying right. And so one of the things that a lot of people do wrong is, again, not paying attention to the data, not people. So everyone is going to sell you. In fact, I just spoke this week to a realtor up in Idaho, and they're like, oh, the prices are going up, they're crazy, we're at all-time high. So in his world, that's awesome. But as a buying world, that's not necessarily good. So, right? So you just got to look at it differently, right? So I'm looking at, well, if I have anything to sell, I want to sell it now, but I certainly don't want to buy at the same time. So buying right is very, 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 very important. And this particular market that I was talking about with him was at all-time highs, okay? Now, I'm not saying it can't go higher. I'm not. What I'm saying is it's at an all-time high. That's all. And so I want to try to buy at an all-time low. So I actually own a property up there that I bought in 2014 that I bought probably when the market was not as hot. Well, for sure. And so in 5 years, it's gotten super hot. And so buying right is very important. So here's an example. Now, I'm not talking about a value add now, okay? So we bought a property in Dallas, Texas, that when we bought it, it did not have a value add component to it, okay? In other words, we couldn't put $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 into it and get more rent. So we were buying it based on a very good cap rate and a very good what we call price per pound, which is cost per foot. So we were buying this property at about a $40 or $50 per foot. So the replacement cost for that property was more like $100. And so we felt like we were making a very good buy, and we calculated this great return, and more importantly, we knew that this area in North Dallas was going to continue to grow over a long period of time, and that we were buying right. We did the same thing in Flagstaff, Arizona, which isn't very far from me. So I bought a property in 2005 in Flagstaff, Arizona, and I looked before this video. I hadn't even checked in a long, long time. But the rents in Flagstaff, Arizona, the average rent 10 years ago was $900, and the average rent today is $1,200 in 10 years. Okay, so rents have gone up $300 in 10 years in Flagstaff, Arizona. Now, for all of you, that's only $30 a year. But over a long period of time, it's a lot of money. It's an additional almost 30%. So buying right is very, very, very important. And the way you do it is by watching the demographics. So who's moving here? And in Flagstaff, for example, they have an urban growth boundary around the city. In other words, the city and the county does not like development, okay? And that's very common around the country. You know, you think a lot of these developers are just building stuff, and everybody's concerned about urban sprawl and all those things, and I get that. But in this particular case, they put an urban growth boundary. Portland has another one, also called an urban growth boundary. Just Google it. It's fascinating. Basically, everything inside the ring has to be redeveloped, and they stop urban sprawl. And so what happens when you do that, when you have a growing city and a housing stock that stays the same, now this is basic supply and demand. So in Flagstaff, we had a lot of people moving there, but not a lot of development. And so whenever you have a lot of people moving somewhere and a market that isn't pro-development, doesn't have a lot of extra housing, then rents are going to go up and housing prices are going to go up, period. So you guys, the best example probably for you is the island of Manhattan. Okay, everybody, you know, Manhattan, New York. It's an island, okay? It cannot go anywhere but up, right? So people are buying now the air rights above, you know, 30, 40, 50 unit buildings for the ability to build higher because more people are moving there, and it's putting all the pressure on the rents and the housing prices, and that's part of the reason why it's so expensive. So it's just a supply and demand thing. So if you can identify a market and buy right, not like the one I talked about in the beginning, which was up in Idaho, you know, where it's at the peak, that's not buying right. That's buying here and hoping it continues to go up. Not a good strategy. So that's a very, very important thing. The last one is not talked about a lot, but that's called a change of use. So I'll give you a great example. A really good friend of mine, there was a big supermarket here that went out of business. Actually, what they did is they relocated to another area that was on a main street, and they left this massive, big shopping center area, and it was called Fry's, and they had a big, you know, empty now grocery store. And so he bought it and turned it into a self-storage. It was brilliant. You think about it, all the infrastructure was there. So, you know, a store, and, you know, whoever built the store in the first place, whoever owned it, you know, the real estate and the land and all that, had already done all that work. And the store itself was paying rent to whoever that was. And so they moved out, and so he bought it after it was vacant because it was worth less. And then he changed the use and turned it into self-storage. It was a brilliant idea. Plus, he had the whole parking lot in front of it to be able to redevelop it. I had another friend just do this at a health club. You know, health clubs historically have these big parking lots in front of them. And then I did it in Las Vegas. I bought a 367 unit property. Now follow me on the math here. Brand new property, 367 units, 2005, 100,000 a unit. Okay, so call it $36,000, $36,700,000 to buy this property. Okay, the plan was not to buy it as an apartment building, but to convert it to condos, which we did. Okay, so by converting an apartment building to condominium, then what you have to do is called a horizontal property regime, and you actually, it's all legal. In other words, you take an individual property and you turn it into common areas and, you know, all the kinds of things, and you create your HOAs, and you create, you know, your HOA fees and all that kind of stuff, and then you can sell them for sale, which you have to do through the real estate department, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of work. It took us about a year, but we bought this apartment building for $37,600,000 or $36,700,000. I can't remember exactly, but it was somewhere in there. It was 100,000 a unit. And we knew before we bought it that condos, new condos in this area were selling for an average of $150,000. So 100,000, 150,000, pretty easy math, 50,000 a unit profit, which is about $18 to $19 million in profit. So before we bought the property for $37 million and change, we knew that we were going to turn it into a condo project and be able to make somewhere between $18 and $19 million on this property. And we did that. So it took about a year to get all the legal on it. Then we sold the units at anywhere from 30 to 40 to even 50 a month. And we sold out the project in less than a year, and it was considered a change of use. We actually started with an apartment building and turned it into home ownership and had a very successful exit for ourselves and our investors. And so this is a big one I see all the time, and this is actually a great way to repurpose real estate and make it into something that it's not today. And it's a great way to build wealth for you and for your investors. So thanks for listening. Hey guys, so if you liked what you just saw, all these 3 ways to make massive amount of money, just hit the link below, give us your email, and we'll send you a summary of exactly what I just said.